The Gifted, Episode 5, Boxed In. This episode, once again, was definitely a good one. This one, I would say, was definitely entertaining more for the emotional element of the characters and just the struggle from both sides of the fence and what everyone was going through. Because typically it's like, okay, they're struggling. There's a cool action set piece. Kind of keeps the story pushing along. There's some emotional stuff thrown in there. We still have the mysterious stuff with Blink's backstory, why she kept opening up a portal to that same road. So still got that question there. We've had moments kind of build up, and some of those moments come to a head. Some things continue onward. As far as the big mystery of what in the world is going on with Pulse and how he was killed and reanimated, or whatever in the world is going on there. But man, did they hit it with the emotional moments in the beginning and into this episode with Jace, who I finally remember his character because there was so much screaming of his name. And it was really good. It was really well done. And man, they had a great moment at the end where it was funny. I was watching this and I was like, geez, I gotta go through this twice. I thought I hit my emotional cap for characters crying in my comic book shows, but they did that in Supergirl today too. And I was like, dang, I didn't expect to have to deal with this twice, because it was a really emotional moment at the end. And it was already emotional in the beginning, and it's this moment with them freaking out, like, I think it's time for us to go, and then that big explosion happens, and it kills his daughter in that moment. And then them going through it, it was really well done, because they have it teased where it's like, we can't leave him like this. And I still can't remember, I want to say her name was Dreamer. I think that was her actual, her mutant name is Dreamer. So, she's being pulled away by Polaris, and she's like, I can't leave him like this. And he was going through his own memories. And I was like, I don't know if he's going to be trapped like that, or if he's going, basically going back in time. But that's pretty much what happened, is that she, with her kind of going through his memories, was forcing him to go backwards in time so that she could kind of read what he was, kind of saying. And then with her not being able to, stop it, he's just sent backwards and, further and further, until he just thinks, crap, this was another crappy day, and I just want to see my daughter. And that was a really sad moment at the end of the episode, where his wife has to throw that right at him, and she of course has to go through it again. And it's just like, man, that was an insane moment at the end of this episode. So that was incredibly well done. And then even all the stuff in between, that was definitely good. Reed dealing with the fact that he ran into the guy who was at the bar, so that was a big bit of contention for him, as well as the rest of the family, because obviously it's his family. So it's like, well, he was working with Sentinel Services, so now that is kind of reflecting on you guys right now. So they, everyone's kind of doing things in their own way, and Reed had to kind of utilize his skills as a persecutor to be like, hey, I know how this works. All of a sudden the chatter stops, so it's like they're doing all these little codes because they know that we're listening in on them. So he puts himself out there, wounded leg and all. So he's like, that's how he can contribute and kind of make things right again, to prove, which side he's truly on. And then the rest of his family with his wife, who did a great job in this episode, because she was freaking out the whole way through, like, I'm not a nurse. Like, she, was using her skills to the best of her ability, and it was just like, not really a nurse, but she made it through. And Lauren and Andy definitely did a great job. Well, Andy didn't really do much. He was so negative, but that was just fortunate. But there was definitely a cool moment with Lauren where she made the tiny disc, and she put it to create pressure. So I thought that was cool. It also made me wonder how that worked, because I was like, I thought the point was that she nicked the artery. So I guess when she was sewing up, she did sew the actual artery or whatever, because I was like, it seems like what they're doing is just putting pressure on it. And then she just sewed his stomach closed, which I was like, that wouldn't work if you cut the artery, because it's still, that's not just the stomach, that's its own little thing. So I guess she sewed up the whole thing. I'm no doctor, so I don't really know the specifics of that, but I was like, I think she would have to do a little more than just sew his stomach back together, which that in itself was pretty nuts. I didn't think that was how they were going to do it. The whole episode, I just kept thinking, if Marcus and Polaris were in this one spot, this would be done, boom, too sweet. It would just be like, all right, boom, she sucks the bullet right out, sew him right up, put a little pressure in there, and he's good to go. But because she wasn't there, they had to split this dude's stomach open, and she has to go in from the inside to get the bullet, because it wasn't a through and through, which is actually, the way they kind of showed it, is actually much more dangerous if the bullet doesn't go straight through you. If it hits you and then it stops, that's actually way worse than if you just have a bullet shoot through you, because then it's just like, okay, well, pressure here, pressure there, as long as no arteries are hit or anything, it's just like, oh, well, you're good, we just cover this up and put pressure, and then it'll heal and you'll actually be fine. With the bullet sticking in them, they couldn't go in to get it, which I thought was kind of weird because typically that's how they do it in most shows. And I was like, that, even though that might be, tough, I was like, it seems a little bit easier than cutting him open and, trying to catch it from the inside. But I like the way they did it. That was definitely an intense little moment where he's bleeding, and then once he starts freaking out because she like nicked an artery, and blood's just like pulling up on his stomach. I was like, this is actually kind of intense. So definitely did a great job with that for sure. And ultimately they end up saving his life at the end, and they have like the couple of mutants who were kind of looking at them as they were kind of performing the surgery throughout the episode. It's just like, okay, you guys are definitely cool. Like your husband kind of did his thing. You guys as a unit, as like a trio, helped save this one guy's life who was there to save your husband. So I was like, okay, you guys are cool. And of course, Reed does his thing. I thought for sure that guy was gonna leave him. Ultimately, he does end up showing up. He was just around the corner waiting. But I was like, yeah, he's definitely gonna leave him, because even when he was going through his like, when John was like, you're gonna help him, like he's, like we have a man who's injured because he risked his life to save him, and now he's trying to pay us back for, all the mistakes that he's made, and if this helps us, then that's what we need to do, so you're gonna help. And it was just like, sure thing, boss. And then when they were in the car, he was like, all right, drop me off, I'll get seen, and I'll meet you like a block around the corner, right? Sure thing. I think he called him prosecutor. He said something. He didn't call him by his name. He was like, sure thing. And I was like, yeah, he's going to leave him for sure. But, he ended up running into the car, which I thought was actually kind of funny, where he's trying to get away and he just runs into it. And I was like, okay, so he was waiting around the corner to, figure out exactly whose side he was on. But that was definitely funny. I was like, man, I thought for sure he was just toast. I was like, I didn't think he would die or anything. But I was like, he's just going to end up getting like captured again. Like that would be crazy if that is how the story went, where they got him and then it was like, wow, he actually got recaptured. That would be nuts. You don't really see stuff like that where they escape and then they instantly get recaptured. That would have sucked. But ultimately they do end up escaping and everything kind of works out fine. So that was good. Of course, we have Blink in this episode facing some of the issues that she's been having lately, particularly this false memory of her and John. And I thought that was really cool. I was glad it at least came to this point in this episode, because she goes through, and of course the guy, I want to try to remember his name. Like all their names show up because I watch everything with the closed captioning on. But the dude who has like the completely black face with the white eye and it's like a star, I forgot what his name is. But like he comes in and is like, hey, everyone's freaking out. We might need to kick this dude out. You might need to wipe his memory. And with Blink being in there, I'm just gonna go with her name is Dreamer. I hope that I'm remembering that right from the subtitles. But with Blink being in there, she was like, okay, yeah. And she was trying to keep everything really subtle. And then Blink was starting to ask her questions like, oh, what's that all about? And it's like, oh, yeah, I could wipe his memories and stuff. And she was definitely not being too coy about it, because, of course, Blink was like, oh, I thought it was like, hey, we should probably go. And she's trying to, like, rush everything. And, of course, with Blink being the one who, teleports them to Marcos and Polaris, they end up getting there, and she's watching her, and it's like, oh, I can manipulate memories and things like that. And of course she sees that and is like, I'm pretty certain that you kind of effed with my head. And so of course Blink ends up confronting her at the end of the episode. And I thought that was actually a really great scene. It was simple. I don't know if it's gonna, I think it will still build up even though they had this confrontation. And we do find out that she could have taken the memory back, which I'm like, I feel like she could have like just done like a little sneak mission and been like, okay, gone. I felt like she should have done that instead of just letting it linger. Like if they found some way, because of course, like she said, it was like, last thing I remember is we had this conversation and I don't remember what that led up to. Like it's suddenly the whole conversation we had was just gone. And it's like, if she can do that, why not just be like, hey, and then just hit her with this smoke, take the memory, erase the fact that she was just like, hey, and I don't know, just make it nothing. And it's like, why not just do that instead of kind of leaving it? Like, I think she left it just because it was like, oh, it hasn't come up in a few days. No big deal. I think that's legitimately how it was supposed to be, because she even says, I think it was the last episode, it was like, what, that stuff fades. And so it was kind of like, I'm sure it faded because she hasn't brought it up to us. So she realized how wrong that was. And, Blink is like, I have this horrible memory of loving someone who doesn't love me, and it's just like a crazy thing to have in your head. So she decides, instead of having it removed, to just have kind of have her distance. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's going to be a conflict or how that's going to play out, but I was glad to see that actually came to a head Even if it was small, it was much smaller of a conflict than I expected it to be when it's like she finally confronted it. And she got her answer, and then it was just like, all right, I got my answer, just stay away from me, what you did was wrong, and that's it. So I was like, okay, I was honestly surprised by how simple that interaction was. So it definitely makes me think that there's going to be a much worse interaction later on. But I was happy to see that that happened, and I'm definitely excited to see where that goes. If she will confront John about it, like, hey, did you know that this is what was going on with me and stuff like that. So I am curious if she will have her moment with him where she's angry, which deservedly so. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say I don't know. It's such a weird situation. It's like definitely the person that altered your memories, without a doubt. Because if anything, Blink and John should team up on her and be like, you shouldn't have done this, even if it was going to risk our lives, because that's a horrible thing to do. Like, it's not just convincing someone, it's changing someone, mentally, which, considering what she did with, as far as it, being love, that can change you in a lot of different ways. Like, that's almost becomes physical depending on how deep the emotion is. And it seems like it's pretty deep. Like, it's effing with Blink's head. So we'll see how that plays out. But definitely thought it was cool that it came to a head. Marcus and Polaris, of course, are officially reunited in this episode. And they have a nice little simple storyline as they go through their, teaming their powers up again, and Polaris like floats the mirror out, and Marcos uses the lasers to reflect upwards so that they can take out the drone. They end up kidnapping Jace, which I thought was a pretty interesting moment because, they drive up, they stop the car, and I love that scene too because he's like, get out with your hands up. And of course she gets out, and she's just, like, the whole episode I felt like she was real nonchalant, or she was being somewhat evil. And she gets out of the car and just like, okay. She tossed the dude, before she even got out of the car, she tossed the one guy in the truck. And Jace kind of turns around and is like, oh crap. And then she tosses the other guy in the woods, and he just stopped. Like, at first he was kind of freaked out, then he was just like, he just had like a nonchalant face. Like, she took the gun, he was just like, yes, I understand now. Like, I can't, like, there's nothing that's gonna work here. He was just like, I lost, I get it. So they end up kidnapping him, and that's where they start to go through, some of the issues that they have, and them going through the old event where his daughter was killed. And of course them now, Polaris and Marcus actually having a kid at some point. That's something they have to think about, but also they have to think about all of mutant kind. It's like, sure, feel for the guy, lost your daughter. That's not on all mutants though, and you can't just hate everybody because of that. Also, we would love some answers on how the F you are like resurrecting our dead friends. So they try to get answers, and of course that's why they have to bring Blink and Dream into the situation. And they get a little bit, they get the symbol. They did get a building which is placed in Baton Rouge, I believe that's what Reed said. So, whatever it is, it may or may not lead there. I am curious if we're going to get like a big change in like, main location, because this is like their big underground base at this point. So I have been wondering, like, will we see them transition, at least within this season? I'm sure in season 2 we'll see them go somewhere else, but I was definitely wondering, especially because we're so early in the season, are we really going to see them make that big switch? Like, this is a huge set for them to have built, to be like, okay, yeah, we're done after a couple episodes. So I don't think we'll actually see them transition to Baton Rouge or anything like that, but I think they'll definitely travel there at some point within the season, or they might at least research it. I don't know if they'll actually need to go there, but definitely some research is kind of on its way. Like, all right, we got some symbols we're not super familiar with. We have this one location where we don't know what happened because the people, they up and disappeared. So not too much is really gained from Jason, for them in this episode. They get the symbol, they get the building, and that's really about it. So they kind of still need to kind of dive in full force themselves and learn what in the world's going on. And they may or may not end up attacking yet another base. They might do kind of a sneak mission and send someone to Baton Rouge, something like that. But I thought it was cool. Marcos and Polaris being reunited. They talk about names for the baby. If it's a girl, then Aurora. If it's a boy, Marcos mentions Rory. So I thought that was pretty funny. But it was a cool seeing them utilizing their powers, and they do the Aurora Borealis thing again, which was nice. So the two of them are reunited. She was definitely having her pissed off it was almost like a pissed off mom moment where it was just like, it was just more for everyone, because it was like, not only am I now dealing with the fact that I have a kid, but now I learned that one of our old friends who was definitely dead has been like brought back to life. So now there's like this whole new dynamic of how far they need to push, as this mutant underground. So she was definitely pushing pretty hard in this episode, and I would love to see it go further. I don't know if they're going to go full Magneto mode. I highly doubt they'll do that, because that's never really been her character. She's actually darker in this than I've actually ever seen. Well, maybe I shouldn't say ever seen that character. If we go back to like the old '90s X-Men cartoon, she was in like one episode of that where she was like kind of in the middle as far as personality wise. But most of what I know about Lorna's character is that with her being like the youngest of Magneto's children, she's actually like the nicest one. She's the one who's growing up, and it's like you have Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. They're both bad guys. They are the bad guys falling right after their bad father. And then she's the one who kind of grows up a little bit younger, and it's like she's with them, but it's always kind of a weird in between for her. And in this, she's definitely, considered one of the good guys, but she definitely gets dark when she needs to get dark. Like when she gets pissed, I'm like, that feels like just old school Magneto stuff, where she's just like, nah, I'm kind of done here. And of course, they're still using everything metallic because that's how it is. She's just, tossing people left and right, and she is in complete control. So it's actually really awesome. But it's like, I like the way they're kind of using her character because I've known her so much as the lesser evil of, kind of the Magneto children. And in this, she's the only one, and she's definitely tougher. It's almost like an older version of her even, because typically she's younger when I see her from like the cartoons and stuff I know her from. Outside of like the old '90s one, which I had no idea that she was Magneto's daughter, and that it was just like, here's a character with green hair. Like they made like no relation whatsoever, but that was her. Blew my mind when I went back to watch it like a few years ago. I was like, oh, that's Magneto's daughter, but they made literally no connection to that. Maybe that wasn't the case in the comics at the time. I have no idea, because some stuff is definitely different from if you watch the old '90s X-Men cartoon to now. It's funny. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed her kind of going a little bit darker in this. Like after what she's gone through, being imprisoned and everything, and learning some of the crazy facts that the rest of the team has found out as well with pseudo resurrections or whatever that's going to end up being. She's pushing. She's like, it sucked. Things have sucked recently, and it's time to push back for real. So definitely enjoyed that, and all in all, I think all the storylines were definitely good. We got some people saved. They pretty much did everything they wanted to do, and it was a complete success in this episode. The only thing that really happened that didn't work was Jace as the villain was kind of tormented a little, and it's like, man, it sucks, but you feel for the guy who lost his daughter, and he's a guy, he was pushed. Like, he was pushed to that point where he lost his daughter because of that moment, and it was because of mutants, and then that just shifted his whole perspective, and it's like, I can kind of feel where you're coming from, but you got to take it one step at a time. You can't blanket that sort of stuff. So I don't know, it's crazy, and I can't wait to see what they do in the next episode, because I'm wondering, like, is he stuck 4 years in the past? Like, what is like, what year is he in right now? So I don't know if that's gonna fade away or how that's gonna play out, because that's kind of the whole point, is like, sometimes this can fade away, sometimes it won't. If Blink can't fade out a memory of loving a dude she never actually knew, there is no way that him reliving, like, just now, 4 years later, him reliving the loss of his daughter is gonna fade. That's gonna be fresh probably for the rest of the season, which is insane to think. But they're basically setting the clock back for this character as if he just lost his daughter, and that could be a huge shift in his character, which is probably why in the promo they show him working with the doctor. That's probably exactly why that happened. He had those 4 years to where he's like, if this was year one or day one, instantly kill all mutants, that sort of thing. But he had those 4 years to be like, nope, I can't disobey these orders, that's not how we operate, hangs up on the dot. And then this next episode, he's reset, they reset the clock on him by accident, and he goes back to basically, it's the first week of him having lost his daughter. That's going to shift his character, and it's going to change his perspective. Like, he was already going after him anyway in this episode, and now he's that character plus the guy who just lost his daughter. So I feel like that's how they end up kind of justifying why he would decide to kind of break the rules a little bit and work with his doctors, because in his head, he just lost his daughter. And I don't know if they're going to kind of switch that up where he gets the emotions of that happening twice, because he doesn't even remember. So I guess it's just him basically doing it for the first time all over again. So I think that's how they're going to do it and justify his character shift. But either way is great, and I cannot wait to see how that changes him for the rest of the season, because that's a different person. When that sort of thing happens to you, 4 years later, who, as the person who coped with that death and, that sort of experience, that is leagues beyond. You're so different from the day one where it just happened to you. So with him being that day one version now, I can't wait to see how they utilize that for really the rest of the season. And if that fades away and he is able to, you know, kind of come back faster because that, you know, that new experience kind of fades from him. But at least for the next couple of episodes, I have to assume he'll be pretty much within that first week all over again of having lost his daughter. So I can't wait to see how they utilize that. But all in all, just another great episode. Of course, would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know your predictions on what is going to happen with Jace and how they're going to change his character and how that dynamic is going to affect the rest of this season. Just what you thought about his story as well, actually seeing it and having that emotional moment at the end. I would love to know how that affected you guys. But just want to know, you know, what you guys are thinking about the episode and whatever is going to end up happening with him. So please comment below, let me know. And of course, thanks for watching.